text of the book, and I color code it for each character so they can see when their part is, and I turn it into a little play. I added sound effects for what? Characters or actions? Actions. This is an add-on book, right? It adds on a character each time. But I felt like the sound effects were better for the actions because the characters spoke. Okay? So, I can accommodate a lot of kids. I can double up on parts, double up on instruments. It's really fun. They can take turns on each part, whatever they want to do. It's teaching them a lot. Okay? And they're acting, they're playing in an ensemble, they're following directions. What purpose do the narrators serve? Why are they so important? Can you tell from this? What are the narrators doing? Yeah, they're telling the story. And they tell everybody what to do. So as long as you have your narrator part written out, your actors, it's really simple. They know when to go because the narrator part always tells them. Like if we go, the narrators tell the story, and then, well, she pulled and she tugged and she pulled. First she pulled hard and then she pulled harder, but that pumpkin just sat. Then the witch knows, "Drat," said the witch. Just then along came a ghost. So the narrator really is providing you with the movement of the story. They tell everybody when to do their part. And whatever book you choose, it's really important that you craft your narrator part appropriately. Because sometimes it's not in there. So you might need to add a little bit of narrator parts so that your actors know what to do. That makes sense? Okay? So I type out the whole book. And then I put it up in slides. You'll notice this is for a slightly older group. If it was for kindergarten or first grade, even though they might not read, I'm still going to do it because they will start to read. They'll learn their lines and then they'll see their words. It's part of learning how to read. But I'll do only a few lines on each slide with much bigger font. Okay? And once I didn't change the font on this, but one of my teachers said, you know, you should choose a font that's like kids write because they don't really write A's like this. So, you know, I went and switched to Comic Sans. I love Comic Sans because it's big and fat and it looks like normal kid writing, chalkboard, different fonts. Just keep that in mind when you're doing that for whatever age. Try to find a font that looks like the way they write A's. Okay, so I go through all that and I have a play. I color code my characters and then I add my sound effects in. We play a lot with this because processing is a big part of it. So we have to process a lot. If I do my processing right, the memorization, the mastery of this whole thing is really easy. They just remember it. Okay? And I'm sitting there going, I'll sit in front and I'll help the instruments like, pew, pew. And it was really good. Who was the kick, the woodblock? Yeah, you have to watch, right? You have to watch the characters. So it's really fun. When I prepare these for students, especially if I have to do a real presentation for the whole school or, you know, like a big concert, I'll actually go in, oh, I'm not going to have it. I'll actually go in and I'll take this PowerPoint and I'll make a book for every character. So I'll take the bat and I'll go in and take all of the bat lines and I'll put them all in order. Just the bat lines. The bat probably has like 7 lines. And then I'll give that to the bat. And I'll give the witch all her lines. I'll take all the narrator 1 parts, even though I'm not going to include everything. I'm just going to have them practice their lines. So I'm going to give the narrator 1 all their lines, narrator 2 all their lines, so that they all can practice their lines at home. I might send it in an email to their parents. You know, make sure that the parents know, we're doing this, practice your lines with your kids. It's not that big a deal, right? The people that have the most are the narrators. But they can read it, okay? And then I would literally have 2 podiums, one on one side of the stage, one on the other side of the stage for my narrators, and they would go back and forth. Or I could put them both on the same podium, with one book, the whole script. And then one of my teachers will stand there with their finger as they go through it to keep them in line. Because they're in first grade, so they get excited and they watch the play and then they look back and they don't know where they are. So I have a teacher at the podium for the narrators, and the narrators just go through and the whole play just happens. It's really easy. I've had kids do books for presidents, a play about the presidents. I've had them do Lewis and Clark. So when you're doing this, the hard thing is to figure out how to incorporate some of the academic subjects, science and social studies. Math's usually pretty easy, because what could you do for math for this? Counting pumpkin seeds, right? What could you do for science for pumpkins? Growing a pumpkin. What's another one? From a seed? What else could you do in science with pumpkins? When my kids were in preschool, the teacher brought in a big pumpkin, and every day they took notes on what was happening to the pumpkin. And it started to rot, and it grew fuzz. They wrote all that down. They drew pictures of the fuzzy, and it got squishy and gross. It was awesome fun. But you can see how a pumpkin rots, decomposes. What happens? Why does it shrivel? You know? You can take a measurement of it, and then a week later take a measurement of it. Has it gotten smaller? Measure, you know, cut eyes, make triangles. Are the lines, are they getting smaller? What's happening? Are they wrinkling? Any other ideas for science with pumpkins? Or even in this story. There's a bat, there's a mummy, vampire, folklore. That could be in social studies. You could take myths and folklore. What else could you do for social studies for this?
Like the history of Halloween or
awesome. Yeah, the history of Halloween. Or even like harvest festivals. Because sometimes in some schools you can't do Halloween. You have to do harvest or fall festivals or whatever. So you could do a history of that. What else could you do for social studies?
You could talk about each individual character and like the history, like Mummy and Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah, you could do like the little reports, book reports on mummies and where do mummies come from? Where do mummies come from? Yeah, we think of mummies, we think of Egypt, right? So now you've got a big social studies thing. Where do you think of vampires coming from? Transylvania, right? Where do we think of ghosts? Haunted houses and all kinds of stuff, right? Bats, where do we think of bats? Where do bats come from? Caves, attics. Okay, so you've got lots of material you could do here. And then if you're writing reports, there's your language arts. What else could you do for language arts? Language arts.
Maybe have all the students pick out like adjectives in the book.
Adjectives. Very good. You could study adjectives from this book. What else could you do? How about spelling words? Poetry. They could write a poem about a mummy. They could write a poem about Halloween, a pumpkin poem. They could use adjectives, their spelling words, and they could write poems using all of those things. They could write little stories. Their very first Halloween costume. Okay, so we've covered language arts, social studies, science, math, and then your music is sound effects, the orchestra. Your drama is the play, and your art.
Colorful.
Yeah, you could have coloring pages. You're going to be doing this, huh?
Props.
Props, right? Your stage set. That's the best, is when you get your kids' artwork as your stage set. You do all kinds of pumpkin coloring pages and just post them all over. You know, our stage wasn't a stage. Our stage was like a platform in the multi-purpose room. So there was a wall behind our stage. and I could just plaster that with their artwork of pumpkins. It doesn't have to look like a, you know what I mean? You don't have to have it look like the pumpkin field with the house in the background. Have it look like something the kids did. What else could you do for art? This one's really cool. Pumpkin stamping. You know, if you have the kids carve a pumpkin and you know when you carve the pieces out, make those into stamps. Dip them in paint, let them make pictures with it. There's shapes, because usually what do they do for eyes? Triangles or triangle nose or circles, and then the mouth is a half moon. You got all kinds of shapes. They can do pumpkin, what's that called? Stamping, pumpkin stamping. Do all kinds of art activities with this, okay? So, you're going to do a unit. You're going to find a book, and you guys need to talk about that, and you need to talk about your grade. I would start with the grade level standards for social studies and science, because those are the hard ones to figure out. That might inspire something like, I want to do 8th grade, and 8th grade is usually studying the Revolutionary War, I believe, in history. Is there a book on the Revolutionary War? Now, when you're doing something like this, you want a simple picture book, okay? So here's Alice in Wonderland. You've seen Alice in Wonderland, the big, gorgeous one, right? This is a simplified picture book of Alice in Wonderland. And look at the text. So much less text. Each page has like a little bit. See? So you want to find books like this, because you don't want to have 75 pages of text.
Are we doing this in our groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Now,